like this. Hi everyone. We'll make a presentation on rent regulation in Brussels, some criticism and alternatives. To begin, where do I speak from? I'm working at the University of Brussels, ULB. So I'm paid by the university, but we were also engaged by the government to update and criticize the rent selling mechanism. So yeah, we have speak from two point of view. Firstly, why rent control? We observed that costs related to housing represent about 38% of the budget of Brussels tenant household. And we know that this could be underestimated. Second, once all housing related expenses have been paid, the poorest 25% of households have only €8 per day per person on average cover all our other expenses. About 1 out of 6 households in Brussels that they have to abandon healthcare for financial reasons in the past year alone. So there is a social need for rent control. What's the rent control in Brussels? We have a second generation rent control, so no increase over the inflation during the contract, but free increase between contracts. And what is new? They try to implement a rent selling like in Paris or Berlin the Mietspiegel. How did they make that? They defined an abusive rent with an estimation plus 20% or minus 30%. The estimation is based on a survey, and we make an estimation. But that was one of our tasks for the government to create a new estimation. And then there's an individual initiative, so the tenant or the landlord can make demands to a joint commission with tenant and landlord representatives. And then there is a possibility of referral to a judge. In our point of view, there is a lot of limits to this kind of mechanism. Firstly, rent review will be left to individual initiative. And obviously, there is necessary means to take such procedure, and not everyone is equal in front of this. It could be too risky for the tenants to engage in a struggle with the owner. And we have the example in Paris where only 300 demands in 1 year now. So yeah, it seems that it's difficult to take this initiative. Secondly, there's a lot of possible objection for the owner. The current housing characteristics not including the model can be used by the owner to contest the estimations. Thirdly, mechanism may raise rents for the investors. Always may explain myself. It could be not, in fact, an adverse effect. Rents below the estimation be increased. And what are the rents below the estimation? We think that it's likely that low-income households tend to fall back on housing with poor condition characteristics, and often these characteristics are poorly taken into account in the model. So the rents below the estimation are likely to be of low-income household. So the mechanism may slightly lower the rents of households who need it least, and raise the rent of those who can least afford it. And finally, the market is the reference. Here we have a graph. 100 is 1868. Sorry, 86. And it's in the increase above the inflation. and inflation well, the inflation is reduced by in the numbers. And so it's above the salary because in Belgium we have salary that are indexed, and it's about 20% increase above the inflation every 10 years. So it means that rents today would be abusive, illegal if we had made this mechanism 10 years ago. So the question is, why should we take the market as reference? So we try to find a new reference, to find another reference, and we came with this estimation, the estimation of net rental income. And we found out that it represents half of the rents. We took the rents minus small and large maintenance costs, property taxes, insurance, and we have around 50% of the. So 50% of the rents directly in the pocket of the owners. And yes, taking this maintenance cost could be a good starting point in order to make a reference order to take the market. This is a table of distribution of housing according to the decile revenue. I will not explain myself. Make here 2 points.
Just 2 seconds. We don't have Wi-Fi yet, so okay. Just a second that someone can hear you. Wait a second.
And where did it occur? Should I start it again?
No, all good. It's in a completely house, so nobody has. Can you say something? Yeah, they can hear you. I share the presentation again.
Okay. I continue. Okay, sorry for this. So the share of housing owned by poor owners, which is a recurrent element, this process, can be estimated at 8.3 or 12.7%. We define poor owners as a member of the free-first decile and not owning housing unit at more than 1 or 2 addresses. But that's the 2 numbers. Why we did so? Because this revenue does not take the rental income into account, just fiscal revenue. On the other hand, 40% of housing are owned by people living outside the city, and 80% of this housing are owned by owners who are in the top 50%. So few housing owned by poor owners and many housing by wealthy owners. To conclude, I would say that we have little confidence in such a rent selling. We do not think that should work. But in short term, moratoria on rent should be a powerful measure for emergency policy to address the social crisis. In long term, the cancellation of net rents would most likely lead to a transfer benefiting more the tenants paying the highest rents. If we reduce the rents, people who are paying high rent will benefit more.
Cancellation of net rents.
So we argue that we should set a redistribution of the share rents that excess the leasing cost organized. So the cost of maintenance And this redistribution must be done by the state, so by taxing spending. And so we had the creation of a public fund. This public fund could both support owner in social difficulty, so we saw that there are few, and support the creation of new housing. Of course, if we limit the price, we have to create new housing. And we argue that it's politically feasible because rental owners residing in Brussels are only about 50% of Brussels households. So there is political feasibility. Thank you for listening. If I would have a question for you, it would be if you have any experiences of such rent setting. Well, here, Orlando. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So one clarification question and one question about policy in Belgium during COVID. So this is just the project. This is not the law that already was accepted and enacted. It's just the projections of the possible effects of the law had it been.
Well, some law have been already accepted, voted, but they are still organizing the joint commission. Landlords, owners do not want, representative landlords do not want to go to that commission. So it's still not working, but that's the plan. And they made estimations. The estimation weren't good. For example, if you put a small apartment in the center of Brussels, you could find on the estimation 125 euros, which is not the case because the estimation wasn't accurate enough. So we made a new estimation, and this estimation had to be published. So it's not working already, but that's the plan for the next month.
So the law is already there.
Yeah.
The rent ceiling is already.
Yeah, but it's not working. It's not already working because the commission is not ready.
Okay, and I know that during COVID there were many in all states of Belgium. So Flanders, Wallonia, and Brussels. You had different types of rent moratorium.
Rent moratorium,
Rent or eviction bans.
Eviction moratorium.
And what's the experience with these eviction bans?
We do not know a lot. After the bans, there were a lot of evictions. I think it protects a lot of students. In what terms?
So there's no evidence.
There's still not a lot of study on it now.
I'm not sure I fully understand the proposal. You are doing a hedonic imputation on the quality with the quality location matrix and so on, and then you determine a fair rent across the entire building stock of Brussels, right? Is there a return on investment plan for the investor? Because you're saying the net rent is the problem. I mean, the net rent is the income for the investor after deducting the cost. So you need to leave him some income at least. Is it kind of that you say I have a cost structure approximated and plus that would be social housing pricing formula, right? You have a cost structure, you say I need that and that maintenance costs, investment and blah, blah, blah. And then plus, let's say 6% over the investment or so, accumulated investment or whatever. So because if you tax away the profit altogether, then of course it will be an entirely non-profit system, and that's not how the market works because you don't have the investors there. You have for-profit investors or at least limited profit investors.
We think in our proposal we take the maintenance cost into account. So and we could have a system where the owners shows that they actually are maintaining their housing, because and and
Upgrading and refurbishing and so on.
if they are in fact maintaining their housing.
You can then roll over to the rent, basically the costs. Yeah, that is social housing pricing formula. But in social housing, you usually have a return on the invested profit, on invested capital, and then the question is, at what price have these owners bought the unit, and so on and so on. It becomes very complex if you do it for the entire market, as opposed to, say, a couple of housing associations and companies.
Of course, there is debate on the formula. What should we take into account for the costs? Should we take the construction or not? Just the maintenance costs? I think that's a big issue, one of the big issues.
Well, the bank loans, if somebody buys a unit in Brussels for renting out with a bank loan, buy to let, very typical. So can you deduct the interest? What is the tax treatment? Is it on a net profit basis? The German system is on a net profit basis. You have one page to your tax declaration with revenue and costs, and the costs include, of course, bank loans and so on. So,
yeah, I think there is a political question beyond this. Should we accept that people buy housing for making money? Should we let them out? The question of the loans.
For profit investment, yeah.
Investment.
We have three classes of investors in Europe in rental. We have non-profits, maybe let's say local governments. We have limited profits like cooperatives and so on, and then we have for-profits. And of course, you can try to emulate a limited profit system where you say the German system, Zweite Berechnungsverordnung, was 6% was the maximum return on equity. But without a return on equity, you will get basically zero investment. You will get slum laws, essentially, because people will stop maintaining and investing. And Brussels already looks pretty bad in some corners, frankly, in particular where you want to serve your constituency with low-income groups. So it would look even worse then, probably. So you need to have a formula about what return on investment is reasonable. If you do it on a cost base, I mean, it's an interesting approach. I'm not against it, because we're doing it in new construction and in modernization and social housing. It's quasi the standard. The question is whether you can transfer it to the rest of the rental market, which is very, very heterogeneous, very many small investors, very, very peculiar, idiosyncratic units. Also, the cost structures are often not clear, right? I mean, if you are big investors, you have 2,000 units, then you have totally different maintenance costs than if you have investors who have 10 units or 5 units. So, not easy for policy.
Sure, I agree. But we don't have, I mean, in Catalonia it happened the same. We had a rent control, but it was based in, we don't know what, because it takes not in consideration the cost of the property owners. And in the Chamber of the Urban Property, there's where I work, we have a lot of information about little owners. So we are trying to do an index about how much it costs for an owner to maintain a rented apartment, because there are lots of things that normally people and the political discourse do not take in consideration. You have a lot of taxes, a lot of rehabilitations of the buildings, a lot of maintenance, and nobody quantified that. So we are trying now to do some kind of index. Despite it's quite complex, because the buildings in Spain are so different ones between them. But that's one of the important things. So maybe we can put a ceiling on the rents, but we have to take in consideration that the owners rent the apartments to make money. If they don't make money, they will not do it. So it's important to know the cost of that activity?
Well, we tried to estimate the maintenance costs. Well, we didn't have data, we did it with literature. And all the literature was about 200 euros per year housing. In my experience, it seems to be a number, not underestimated. That's one goal of our survey. We are planning with the government in Brussels to estimate how much money the owners needed to maintain their housing. But yeah, if we took this number of 200 euro, it seems not a lot.
I mean, I see from your footnote, you take social housing companies, right? And you translate that maintenance cost to small private landlords. I mean, that's comparing apples with pears, really.
It's not only social housing. One of the studio was social housing. There's four. There's also in the private sector.
I mean, one way to unveil it would be to have a tax system where you can make the deduction of maintenance costs and so possible, and then you have a revelation through the tax system. So landlords start reporting their true maintenance costs because they have a benefit in terms of reducing their taxable income. Yeah, that might be an option.
And we could have a system where the owners, if they want to have a reducing tax, have to prove it with the bill of.
Yeah, the costs have to be proven to the tax office, of course.
To have a selling, and then if you go above this cost, you have to prove it.
Yeah. What's the tax formality ratio of private landlords in Belgium?
The what?
Tax formality. I mean, what percentage of private landlords report their rent income?
Very few.
Very few. Yeah. So
Very few.
it's more theoretical.
Yeah. They don't have to.
It's not enforced, probably. Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, thank you.
thanks a lot. And now
sorry, it's the other one.
okay, so thanks a lot, Hugo.
I don't know which one I have to.
Um,
Sorry.
Alexander.